Afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our sections. We're going to have 3 sections in the first part before we have the coffee break. And this will be the first section in the afternoon. Okay, so would you like to join me in welcoming the 2 presenters, Dr. Malila Prado and also Shen, to share their studies about grammar instruction in the AI era.
Thank you very much, Christy. So hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So my name is Malila. And this is Dean or Susie to us. Susie. So we're going to talk about a project that we carried out at our university. So it's Sino Foreign University in China. It's a private institution in China. And we work with the English Language and Literature Studies program. So what we needed to do was, Susie had already taught the Discourse in Grammar course within our department in the past. And I was going to start teaching it with her last year, from September to December. And so when we sat together to work on the syllabus, we started thinking about, okay, so how are we going to prepare our students, English majors, to live in the future in which AI exists, or AI is going to help them mainly with grammar. So what kind of grammar do we have to work with? So we got funded to work on this project to rethink our assessment practices, our syllabus, and everything that we needed to do. So this is what we're going to talk about today. And this is also a chapter that we contributed to a forthcoming book on technology and language teaching. So Susie, the floor is yours.
Okay, so good afternoon. And I will start with a question like this. Why should we teach grammar in AI era? And I think also from the morning session, we have talked about this. Over the past 2 to 3 years, we have overseen an era when generative AI like ChatGPT, DeepSeek, and Douban, and many other of them have made flawless grammar instantly accessible to the students, especially with their works in higher education. So particularly in a higher education setting like us, we work with English majors who have already got advanced English skills as well. So students can now produce error-free text with simple prompts, and fueling a dangerous misconception on writing and grammar today, and makes people think about questions like this, and also pose difficulties and challenges to the teachers as us. And I believe I'm not the only one who hears students, ever complain or talk things like this. And why should they learn grammar if AI can already do a perfect job for them, and which inherently impose the question on us as teachers? So why should we teach? And to address this question, we need to go back to the basic understandings about grammar and grammar teaching. So what is grammar? Historically speaking, right, it is central to the language education, very important, and to every school, especially even if it's just like the primary or even high school, and to the higher education as well, we teach grammar. Yet, traditional pedagogy often treats grammar as an abstract, prescriptive code and rules locked in textbooks and policed by linguistic elites, which has reflected what we call named as the AIinLT canon. Right, so our study instead would like to take a different perspective, which decenter these tenets regarding grammar and grammar teaching. Okay, so traditionally, you will see how the teacher will grammars as prescriptive rules, and how students on the grammar understanding of grammar as a set of academic requirements, right? They just do this for exams. And also, in thinking of the practice, there are a lot of practitioners, even you do the job interview with the company, they're gonna look at or even pay attention to the grammar of the applicants, right? So, but we would like to take this from another perspective. What we think of grammar is from a functional perspective, as not just the rules, but the scaffolding of logic and human expression, right? So the teaching practice as I have mentioned, right, for the decades, the pedagogical norms remain overwhelmingly prescriptive. However, the rapid rise of generative AI has fundamentally reshaped the ecology of language education. By diminishing the irreplaceability of basic grammatical skills, generative AI compels foreign language teaching to pivot from instrumental training toward cultivating higher order competencies, which might include critical thinking, intercultural negotiation, and innovative problem solving. Okay, so it is against this background we raise this question at the AI era. So why we teach grammar and how we should do that. And especially with the development of AI, we now facing the challenges, even with the classes that we taught, right? There are misconceptions about the value of grammar in language teaching and learning. They just reduce it, as I mentioned. The student just take it as the exam requirements, academic requirements. So they reduce grammar to rigid rules, and the AI-driven grammar passivity, which is, you know, we also talked about this in the morning, right? Some of the students may over rely on the AI to produce correct grammar or even perfect their grammar. And also their pedagogical shortcomings, as I mentioned, right? The overwhelming prescriptive approach. Okay, so against this background, we pose the research question as such. So how does the integration of AI tools and multilingual approaches transform students' understanding and application of grammar in higher education, particularly as regards their development as future language professionals, because they're English major students, language students. Okay, so Malila has already talked about the background of our research. So this is a course that we taught last year, named as Discourse and Grammar. We enrolled 67 students from our English major students. They are year 3 students, so quite advanced actually with their English competency. And so that is the context. And also we designed, so in facing, actually as the co-instructor, we face the challenges of adapting syllabus design, teaching materials, rubrics, and assessment methods to address these pedagogical demands of the AI era. And we adapted the pedagogical design of the course and implemented to the class that we taught to this particular group. And the student, we got the approval, of course, right, the ethical approval to collect data from them. So we designed the workshops, the assessment, and the portfolios. Actually, we collect a lot of data from this group of participants for the course. And we took an action research, which included 4-phased circle. So act, describe, evaluate, and plan. So this is not just an implementation or an intervention to the students, but actually an opportunity to create a dialogue and also that the student to participate into this process so that we can collect the feedbacks from them. And we as I mentioned, right, we collect a lot of data already from the students, but at current stage, we just focus on the quality, the interviews that we conducted with the students after the class. And we did a qualitative analysis using Atlas IT. Okay, so for the pedagogical choices, first of all, we restructuring the theoretical foundation for advanced grammar teaching, in which we mean that in designing the teaching materials, we centered on systemic functional grammar and emphasizing grammar as a logic-driven, context-sensitive tool. And also in terms of the practice, we're going to analyze this all real-world tasks really related to the life of the students instead of just imposing rules on them. And also we include human AI collaboration with it, which is also about the digital literacy and the framework of AI literacy as well. And we designed workshops that encourage students to use AI tools, generate comparative text that human produce, the human production and the AI production, and to compare the differences and note for critical analysis, and also have critical reflection on the workshops that may expose AI limitations and ethical dilemmas as well. So in that sense, we sort of think of this, this is just preliminary. So we have this 3C model in thinking of rule clarification. When I introduce, we use functional grammar, how we use these concepts to reconstructing the understanding or the conception of grammar in students' mind. And also the AI collaboration, right? The understand, access, promote, corroborate, and integrate. So all the workshop activities are going to include steps like this. And hopefully, in the end, we're going to change or somehow reconstruct the view of grammar to our students. And okay, so let's welcome my partner, Malila.
Okay, so this is just as Susie mentioned before, this is just an outline for us to make it clear. So this is an MR, it's a major required course to all our year 3 students in the English Language and Literature Studies. So we have students from TESOL, students from EPC, which is English for Professional Communication, and LSC, which is Literature Studies in English. And so we wanted to review the syllabus. We worked with the students for 14 weeks. And during these 14 weeks, we had lectures, we had workshops. So every week we had three classes. So we had lectures and workshops every week. And in the workshops, we had the AI integration. And the AI integration needed to make students reflect not only on the kind of texts or the kind of production, the kind of generated texts that come from AI chatbots, but they also needed to see or to understand, to explore how to prompt as well. So then we collected all the material, the quizzes, the portfolios that the students produced, the group presentations, and we interviewed some of the students who gave us consent, because not everybody gave us consent to work with their data. Can you please? Thank you. This is an example of one of the worksheets that we used. So basically, we needed to start from analysis or linguistic analysis that the students could work with in groups, for example. And then after some work, the students could go to, explore with AI tools. So we made sure that the students were exploring first their own experiences or their own knowledge firsthand, so that they could then analyze or produce or even interfere texts that would come out from their exploration of AI tools. At the time, this was last year. So last year, we only had Ernie Bot available. That is Weixin Yunyun. I have my consultants here. So we only had that one. And then we generated one bot for this class, so we could access all the students' prompts and the text that the students were generating. So this is also part of the data that we analyzed, but we're not going to talk about it today. Okay, so now this is the qualitative analysis of the interviews only. So we haven't finished analyzing the other sets of data yet. We are in the process. This data that we're going to see now is just for the book chapter that we just submitted a few months ago, actually, okay? So there are 3 key findings that we're going to discuss today. Grammar, so how their view of grammar has changed. The AI integration, if it was useful or not. And their views of their own professional future, how they could see, because they are future English teachers, they are future editors, or they're going to work with English, or literature professors maybe. So, all right, so you're going to see now some extracts, not all of them, of course, but some extracts that illustrate our case here. But basically, our students talked a lot about the changes, how they approached this course in the beginning. So they mostly said that it was, oh, grammar is boring. Grammar is a set of rules that we have to obey. From an understanding that, no, grammar is actually a way that we can see the discourse, that we can try to convince people, or we can see, for example, how people are manipulating us into something. So they could start to see critical discourse analysis, media, etc., through the use of grammar. And then, so from rules to resources, and they started to talk a lot about meaning making. and how grammar would support their style, for example, and how their style would be different from a prompt or from an outcome that students get from an AI tool, because this is very difficult. Many times we criticize our students, we say to our students, whatever comes out of ChatGPT, for example, is robotic. The students don't see it that way. They see those beautiful words and they think that, no, this is good enough. They only start to understand what voice is from this kind of ideas when we start exploring style, for example, rhetoric, etc. And also about AI literacy. And by the way, I would like to thank Dr. Moorhouse, who's here today, because he was one of the first to really, he went to BNBU in the past and presented a workshop to us just to make us think about this whole process. So AI literacy in practice. So all these steps, even though we didn't clearly talked about the AI literacy with all the framework, the students started talking about the framework itself. So they started talking about the access, prompting, corroborating the ideas, and also using AI, for example, to help them edit their work. Thank you. And their professional identity. So as I mentioned before, some of our students will become, I think that most of the students will become English teachers, or they are there because they want to become English teachers. But many of them also want to work with publishing, for example. They want to work with literature. They want to work with writing, creative writing. So many of them started talking about how helpful AI can be, not in producing or generating texts for them, but helping them make choices. That's the most important aspect of this work, how agentive you can be, or how you can enact your identity, for example, when you are writing and you're making choices over grammar, not because of the rules, but because you can make those choices. And so they see grammar as a tool for writing, teaching, and analyzing, and they say that AI is seen as an opportunity, but also as something risky, because of course they also talked about their fear of, okay, we're graduating in 2 more years. What's going to happen to us? Is it true that we're going to lose our jobs before we have them? So they were also afraid of that, of course. Thank you. Now, even though most students talked a lot about the good opportunities that they could come up with using AI, the TESOL students often talked about the problems that they have with, for example, they need to teach simple present. They need to teach past continuous. Again, going back to the ELT canon that Susie mentioned in the beginning of the presentation. So we have an editorial market that is established under complexity, for example. So first you need to learn the verb to be, then you need to learn the simple present. So we don't see language as something that you can explore, something that comes from the discourse, for example. So even though the students could see possible ways that they can pursue from other courses like material design or curriculum development, for example, they were still talking about it. So they were talking about the constraints that these concepts impose on them. Okay. And then, so why should we teach grammar then in the AI era? So grammar needs to be a contextual, ethical, and dynamic process. It's not a set of rules that we impose to our students. It's not subject plus verb plus object. It's not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be, okay, so why did this happen? How did this happen? And then we need to analyze how that process serves the meaning making. And then grammar instruction has a place in the classroom, not where rules are dictated, but instead a space for negotiation, for meaning making, and for the construction of knowledge, but mostly for co-learning. We made sure to have students working groups all the time. So students were using the AI chatbot, also working in groups. And then we could see, for example, the growth that the students have. Some students have a different experience with AI chatbots. Some of them are more proficient with that. So we could see the gains that they brought to the group when they were exploring things together. And as we worked with functional grammar and also AI literacy, we could see that these empower the students to improve their language skills, but to position themselves as critical, reflective future professionals. And some suggestions, some takeaways that we took from this experience. In the curriculum, we need to integrate functional grammar, not remove. It's not about let's not learn grammar. It is let's learn grammar, but in a meaningful way. The assessment, we need to make sure that our students are given the opportunity to evaluate their choices and their meaning. It's not about correctedness only. It's not about the rules that are imposed to us. And then the pedagogy, we can position AI in the classroom, but as a scaffold, not as a shortcut, for example, for the students to generate a text and submit the text to you, or as a threat to us. This is not the idea. The idea is for us to have AI, like we pose the questions, for example, to students, and then students can think of answers or possible answers. And we need to make sure that we are encouraging our students' voice, the linguistic agency, particularly for the TESOL students who demonstrated that they are still limited to those old concepts of simple present, simple past, etc. So we need to make sure that we are helping them break free from those concepts. These are our references, and we are now open to questions and answers that you might have. Sorry, you have questions, maybe comments. Thank you.
We have around several minutes for question and answers. So if you have any comments or any questions, you can raise up your hand and I will pass you a microphone.
You have to make the question in Portuguese. I'm kidding.
Muito obrigada. That's very tempting. I wonder if you would see a potential for more inductive teaching with this. So, maybe, I also think probably there's a comfort level of like, okay, I've mastered grammar X, grammar Y, grammar, so maybe instead inductive approach. So they have lots of samples of different versions. And then from there, they can figure out a rule of some sort.
Yes, this is actually one of the things that we worked with through the workshops. If you can see the worksheets that we have. So we developed exactly that. So we guided students into the questions that they needed to ask. So first they needed to analyze, for example, a text, or they needed to analyze a poem, for example, and then they needed to use AI tools, but all the questions were kind of open questions so that students could come up with the results. And then we opened to discussion. So each group, for example, sometimes they had different tasks over the same text. So they needed to produce this, for example, they had an encyclopedic entry, and then they needed to produce that into an email or into a diary. We have 2 participants here. So a diary, a teenage girl diary, and then another one into a tabloid, British tabloid, for example. So they needed to produce this kind of thing. And then they needed to open the discussion to the group to see the kind of affordances that the AI tools would give them. So this was one of the kinds of the things that we worked with. Now, there is one little problem with the deductive approach, which is the expectations of the institution and the students. Students are expecting us to come up front and teach. This is the expectation. So whenever we propose something, we need to start from here first, and then we start working in groups little by little. Because if we just come and then start exploring some deductive approaches, for example, the students are going to be a little lost. So first we meet their expectations, and then we try to break them little by little. Anyone else? Yes, this has to do with the AI literacy access. So the AI tool that we had available at the time was ErnieBot. So ErnieBot is a Chinese AI tool. So ChatGPT.
Baidu.
Baidu.
文心一言的大模型.
And then we bought some amount of data. And then we had one student, a senior student, prepare chatbot for us. So we have, if you go to our page, our department page, we have, it's called AIinLT AI. So we have a chatbot. It's only for this course because I wanted to make sure that we could see what the students were, how the students were writing their prompts and what the students were getting from the AI tool. So I needed to see that. Yeah, so that's what we were using, ErnieBot. Okay. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I came in the middle of the session, so I just saw you put down the knowledge functional grammar on the slide there. So I know a little bit about functional grammar myself. So my question is it only through that lens that we're gonna see how to make meaning making? Talking about the topic here, combining AI and grammar instruction, or is there like another way through which we can also do the kind of meaning making through AI combining AI grammar instruction? Yeah, that's my question. Yeah.
You want to get that? I'll start and then you. Okay. So when we were working with, for example, whatever we were doing, we asked the students to analyze a text first. For example, we were working with transitivity. And then we asked the students to analyze a poem, for example. And then it was a poem written by a South African poet. And then the students needed to make sure that it's a kind of poem that ChatGPT or any AI bot would make mistakes with, because you really need to understand the meaning. You need to understand the contextual clue, for example. So this is something that we tried to make sure of, that students wouldn't get ready-made answers that would come out from any kind of tool. That was the initial process. And then the students needed to reflect on it. And then they needed to make sure to write something or to translate something from Chinese to try to show them in practice how transitivity happens, for example. And then we did the same thing with cohesion and so forth. So each topic that we worked with, we also had a workshop involved. And then a workshop would start with activities that students had to analyze by themselves, and then they needed to use AI chatbots.
So it is more about like understanding grammar. Yes. Like from the discourse point of view, that's why functional grammar came in here.
Yes,
Right.
yes, and also not only understanding but also analyzing, because we're working with future English teachers maybe or English linguists. So we needed to make sure that students could also understand and analyze.
I think for your question about systemic functional grammar, so when we introduce this to the students, for example, we're going to teach the students the transitivity system, right? So we talk about 6 different types of process, like mental and material. And when we apply this to the analysis, so we're going to present the student of a journalist paper as the media. So if this is a human production, I'm going to see a lot of, so they report this event by using a lot of mental process, might be just an example. And so what if you ask the AI to do the same? Will AI make the same choices with all of mental process, or they actually change it to material and maybe to other kinds of process? So by introducing this system to the students and then using an example about this meaning making and also its relation with grammar, we think that actually systemic functional grammar can help a lot with teaching.
I think that's the end for the presentation. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we're moving to the second section, and then it's my time. So I'm going to present with my research associate, Dr. Wang Yunyun, to share with you something about how we can make use of AI chatbots to design some pragmatic oral tasks and then to interact with our learners inside the classroom. So the title for our presentation is AI-assisted pragmatic oral tasks in L2 teaching and learning, design and implementation. So in the first part of our presentation, I'm going to briefly talk to you about the definition of task-based language teaching and pragmatic oral task. And then I will invite Yunyun to work with me to give you a showcase to show like how we use ChatGPT as our chatbot and how we prompt it to interact with learners to perform some kind of oral task. Task-based language teaching is a very popular teaching method in the second language classroom that I think is not a new term to most of you in the room. The beauty of task-based language teaching is that we can create some kind of authentic communication scenarios so that the learners can get involved into this kind of meaningful communication using the target language to express their ideas. And by this kind of practices, they can develop their oral proficiency or some other proficiency skills. And this is why task-based language teaching has been mentioned in the English language education curriculum document by the Education Bureau of Hong Kong many, many times. The main purpose for using TBLT is to develop second language learners' communicative competence. But when we're talking about communicative competence, most of the time we try to link it to the linguistic production of L2 speech. That is the linguistic competence, which means that we think about whether students make grammatical mistakes, whether they're able to use complex, advanced vocabulary to express themselves, or whether they can use complex sentence structures to express their ideas. Well, these are still very important for second language learners. And not many teachers emphasize pragmatic competence and also sociolinguistic competence when they're trying to teach English or design activities in the classroom. Pragmatic and sociolinguistic competence can be related to how learners are able to initiate the conversation with people and how they are able to shift topics from one to another, and whether they're able to do turn-taking naturally. And also when they're chatting with different people of different power dynamics or relationships or different social distance, do they know how to use language appropriately to express their ideas? And this kind of aspects, we believe, should also be emphasized in classroom activities, such as the task in TBLT. So this is what we are trying to recommend is, of course, we need to create communication scenarios for our students to use the target language to interact with people. At the same time, we might also consider whether we would like to incorporate some kind of pragmatic demands so that they will not only focus on linguistic production, but also think about their pragmatic or sociolinguistic production. And this could be an example that we can consider. Okay, so first of all, we might need to consider the needs of our students based on some kind of needs analysis. And then we might try to target at some kind of speech aids or pragmatic structures that we think they would like to know or they would like to develop in the future. And then we might come up with some kind of scenarios that they might encounter in the real life communication. Okay, then say, for example, we can design a role play task where we involve students to chat with their teacher and to make a request to ask the teacher to write a recommendation letter or a reference letter to support their university application. That in this case, we create a real-time communicative scenario and we give them the chance to express their ideas and convey meaning. But at the same time, okay, we also need to push them to think about how to make a request appropriately, especially when they're talking to someone who seems to be more powerful in this context, then how they can address the language to avoid those kinds of face-threatening acts, and then to make it comfortable for the teachers to agree to help them. Okay, so this could be something we can use the task to encourage our students to consider how they can use language for communication. But this could be very ideal. Then the reality is that in the classroom, usually we have one teacher and we have many students, like 20, 30 students. And it might not be possible for the one teacher to interact with the 20, 30 students simultaneously if we have that kind of teacher-student interaction role-play task. And it might also not be very feasible, considering the time limit for the class, to check with each student one by one, okay, and also to give them some prompt feedback, because we just have one single teacher in the classroom. And this is why Yunyun and I would believe that it might be an appropriate way for us to introduce AI chatbot, such as ChatGPT, to be our teaching assistant, okay, so that they can play the role as a teacher and then interact with their students. And also, they might be able to give some immediate feedback and personalized feedback on the students' speech performance inside the classroom, so that the learners don't need to wait a long time for us to grade their speech and then give them feedback. And the benefit of this, according to some studies in the literature, is also that for L2 learners, especially for those who are shy to interact with people, they prefer talking to chatbots or AI chatbots before they are asked to do some kind of conversation with real people, because they might feel more enjoyable, more comfortable, and they'll be more willing to communicate before they think they are confident and ready enough to communicate with real people. And this could be another reason why we feel that there might be a chance for us to introduce AI chatbots to interact with the learners. And the next part of the presentation is more like a showcase, because we would like to share with you a task that we designed as part of our research project. And this task is for year 1 undergraduate students in Hong Kong who are in the transition period from secondary education to tertiary education. And we came up with this kind of scenario because we interviewed some professors at the university level, and sometimes they complain that their students are not very well aware of how they can talk to a professor very politely. And they hope that there will be this kind of practices for the learners to get them ready to interact with a professor in the appropriate way. And based on this kind of findings in the needs analysis and also the literature review, we came up with this scenario for our students. Okay. We assume that the learners, they are on a study trip to Singapore. So they're now an exchange student at the National University of Singapore. And at the same time, they hope to schedule an appointment with a professor at that university to invite the professor to Hong Kong to attend their speech contest, which they organize as the chairperson for a debate club. Okay. And then we asked them to assume that now they're in the office of the professor and they're asked to extend their invitation to the professor to ask the professors to come to Hong Kong this coming August. To make sure that they not only focus on the linguistic production, but also the pragmatic or social linguistic part of their speech, okay, we designed this role-play task or role-play card. There are different items that we hope they could cover when they have the conversation with the professor. And the learners are told that they are free to initiate the conversation in any way that they are comfortable with. And they can also add some additional information if they want to. But the whole conversation, even though we hope to be natural, should cover this different kind of items. In the red color, you will see there are different kinds of speech acts that are related to pragmatics of linguistics, because we hope that when they're trying to communicate with the professor and extend their invitation, okay, they will also be able to shift their attention to the pragmatic production of their speech. And that's why we try to include this kind of speech acts in this role-play card. Okay. After we designed the scenario and also the role-play card, okay, we tried to write up some prompts to invite the ChatGPT to play the role as a professor. Then now I would like to invite Dr. Wang to share with us, okay, how we designed the prompt and how we rewrite.
So we all know that AI, generative AI is a knowledgeable assistant that
can answer almost any question we have, but the quality of its answer depends entirely on how we ask our question. So this comes down to something called prompt. So today, let's start with basic. What is a prompt? So a prompt is a text input that trigger a response from generative AI. And what is prompt engineering? It is a process of crafting and refining prompt to guide generative AI to produce the desired output. And why does this process matter? Because it directly affects accuracy and relevance of AI's response. So you can think of prompt engineering as asking a wish to Genie of Aladdin. So if you simply ask, I want to be rich, so the result may not be what you expect. But instead, if you try to be specific by asking, I want $1 million US dollar. So you are more likely to get what you expect, right? So this is prompt engineering. There are some general best practice for prompt engineering. So this you can find on Google. So the first one is to be clear and specific. So a vague prompt like tell me about dogs is too broad for AI. But instead, if you try saying, tell me 3 interesting facts about golden retriever, this will give AI a clear direction. Second, set the context. If you ask, how should I respond to the question, what is your biggest shortcoming? AI may not know the situation you are referring to, but if you specify for a job interview, how should I respond to the question, what is your biggest shortcoming? Then AI will be able to give you more tailored answer. Like, well, sometimes I'm too much of a perfectionist. Number 3, assign role. So if you try to practice English with AI, simply saying, help me practice English or let's talk doesn't give AI enough information. But instead, if you define your role, saying you are the waiter at the restaurant, I'm the customer, let's role play a conversation. This will set up a scenario for a more meaningful interaction. Number 4, provide example. Sometimes showing AI what you expect by giving him some example is a good way to AI to produce output that match the desired style. And iterative refinement, and we know that prompt writing is an iterative process, and don't be afraid to refine or adjust your prompt if the initial version isn't perfect enough. So you can always follow up by saying, let's make it more concise or in a more professional style or within 100 words. So there are 5 stages that we implemented for designing our prompt. So although people may differ, the approach may differ from person to person, but this should give you an idea of how a prompt is produced. So first, we analyze student task sheet and set goals for what we expect AI to do to achieve. And next, we draft the initial prompt, and then we test the prompt by running it through AI to see what kind of responses we can get. If the responses aren't accurate, we can then analyze what went wrong and troubleshoot. And finally, we can refine our prompt. So it's an iterative process, as I said before. And this process continues until you have get the expected results. So based on the student task sheet, Christy just mentioned, and we break down several key objectives that we set for AI. And we expect our AI to be able to simulate real-world conversation by role-playing Professor Hugh. And And we want our conversation to follow a certain structure, but also maintain flexible to adapt to unscripted input from the student. And specifically for our project, we hope that AI would allow the student to practice specific pragmatic function, like giving advice, request, or refusal. And finally, we hope that AI could maintain formal implied language throughout the conversation. So to develop our prompt, we also consulted existing prompt frameworks. So there are some framework out there that can be used to adapt to different contexts and expectations. And the one we found very useful is called RASCEF, RASCEF. So the acronym stands for role, action, step, context, example, and format. And this means if we want to design effective prompt for AI-assisted learning and conversation, it's recommended that we specify each of these components in our prompt. So with our objective and framework in mind, this slide shows the initial prompt. So as you can see, we start with a clear task instruction. We ask AI to do a role play conversation in English. And then we organize the prompt into 3 clear parts. And for the first part, the context section, we assign ChatGPT the role of Professor Hugh, and we provide the full context and background information. And if we move to the second section, the conversation structure, you can find that we break down our interaction step by step. And for each step, we will specify who initiate each turn and what are the expected responses. So I'm just showing part of the conversation structure. So the remaining parts is not displayed on this. And in the third section, expectation notes, this is a part where we set the register and tone. And so we require AI to be natural and professional, and the language it used are suitable for the academic setting. Of course, the initial version of a prompt is rarely perfect. So after testing it with AI, we have identified several issues. And here I'm going to summarize some common ones. The first one is missing information. So students sometimes forget to mention the key information in their response. However, ChatGPT assumed the information was already given and just jumped to later steps. So as an example, you can see in this conversation, student ask, could you prepare a speech to share with a university student some methods and tips on how to improve spoken English? And AI, as Professor Hugh, responds, I appreciate the opportunity. However, I do have a slight concern. I have an important meeting with the dean that day from 10 to 11. Would it be possible to reschedule the speech for a different time? So the issue here is that AI just assumed that time and date was already given, even if the student didn't mention them, right? So to fix this problem, we refine our prompt by setting a gatekeep question to validate the input. So in our revised prompt, we instruct AI to check. So as you can see from this blue sentence, before proceeding to any next step, check, have I explicitly given you time and date? If not, ask for them. So in this way, after this improvement, our conversation is like this. Student ask, could you prepare a speech to share with a university student some methods and tips on how to improve spoken English? AI as a Professor Hugh respond, that sounds a wonderful idea. Is there a specific time slot for the keynote speech? How long would you like the speech to be? And the second issue we've have found is that AI being overly agreeable. So this is a very common issue. We know by default, ChatGPT tends to give cooperative responses and won't seek clarification during the conversation. And this may lead to an easy mode interaction where AI would simply go along with whatever is suggested, even though it doesn't make any sense. So an example of this, as you can see from this conversation, AI as professor asked, would it be possible to reschedule my speech for another time during the event? Student respond, sorry for that, the context time is fixed. Could you ask them to reschedule? And AI as a professor replied, I understand the situation. I'll try to reschedule my meeting with the dean to another time so that I can keep my commitment to your event. I'll make it work. So here you see that issue is that AI as a professor just immediately agrees to the student's request. So which is weird because AI sounds very pushover, which doesn't make sense for a professor, right? So to refine this, we instruct AI to evaluate the input and avoid simply agreeing. So in our revised prompt, we specify, as you can see from the brewers, we specify if the student doesn't provide explanation, AI will ask for clarification. But if a satisfactory explanation is provided, then AI can accept the suggestions. So after approval, the conversation will be like this. AI asks, would it be possible to reschedule my speech for a different time? Student reply, I trust you can find alternative time to meet the dean. And AI as a professor will respond, I understand the importance of timing. However, I must ask for some clarification. Could you explain why the timing for my speech cannot be adjusted? Once I understand, I'll do my best to reschedule my meeting with the dean. So we can see that this version of a professor is still being applied, but much better than the previous version. And another issue we encounter is that sometimes AI takes over the student's speech act. So we know that by default, ChatGPT tries to be helpful and often anticipating what a user might expect and filling in the information gap. So what does this mean? So you can take a look at this conversation and student say, thank you for agreeing to be a keynote speaker of our context. And AI as professor respond, you are welcome. By the way, do you want me to prepare the speech? And then the students simply say, yes, yes, please. So the issue here is that AI just jumped ahead and offered to prepare speech, even though the students didn't get a chance to make the request. So to refine this, we delay AI initiative and instead cue the student to perform the speech act. And in our revised prompt, we instruct AI to ask if there's anything he needs to do for the context. So by answering this question, the student were able to perform the speech act of request. And with this improvement, now our conversation looks like this. Student says, thank you for agreeing to be the keynote speaker of our contest. And AI says, you're welcome. Is there anything you would like me to do for the contest? And student now can perform the speech act. Yes, could you please prepare speech? Something like that. So at the end of each conversation, we also ask ChatGPT to provide feedback on student performance. And this requires another prompt. So in the feedback prompt, we instruct ChatGPT to use CFR framework 2018 version to grade my oral performance and give me more qualitative feedback. And we also ask, please comment on these specific areas: general linguistic range, vocabulary range, grammatical accuracy, etc. So here, I want to highlight two rationale for designing this prompt. First of all, so this prompt is anchored in a well-established framework, which is called CFR 2018. So ChatGPT already has access to the information about this framework. So all we need to do is to ask or to prompt. Second, because we expect AI to provide a detailed and useful comment, not just general advice. So to do this, we ask AI to focus specifically on these areas. So this way, students can get feedback that can actually help them to improve their performance. So to wrap up the design of prompt, here are some practical tips. So number one, to start simple and then to add complexity. As I mentioned before, prompt design is an iterative process. And even if your prompt is solid, there's always a room for improvement. So you may try out different approaches to get the best possible result. Second, you can encourage students to reflect on their conversation, because since students are the one who interacting with your prompt, so they are in the best position to comment on your prompt design. So after each session, you may ask them to comment on what went well and what doesn't, and what improvement can be made. So finally, we can use generative AI to optimize your prompt design. So we know that AI can be used to refine and test your prompt, but also sometimes, like at the initial stage, we can use AI to brainstorm some new prompt ideas. So we received some feedback from student participants, and here are some of them. So their experience highlight both the positive and negative aspects of using AI in language teaching. To conclude, so AI-assisted pragmatic oral tasks are a valuable addition for second language learning and teaching. And we have to make sure the effectiveness, first of all, by incorporate pragmatic demands. And also, we need to write appropriate prompts and pilot and fine-tune them. Finally, I want to acknowledge the support that makes this work possible. So the work is supported by RGC. Here are the references, and your comments and feedback are appreciated.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid that we don't have any time for question and answer, but after the third section, we will have the coffee break. And then if you have any suggestions or feedback, you're more than welcome to let us know. So now I would like to invite the third group of colleagues from Language Center at HKUST to present their work to us.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We are from the Center for Language Education at HKUST. So today, I'm Xuyan, and this is my colleague, Krista. So today, we're going to present our huge project team to present our project to you. Yeah, I mean, this is a project funded by a teaching and learning initiative at UST. So actually, our deliverable will be our courses and our students at UST. So this is also one of the reasons that we have a huge team, and we are trying to involve as many courses as possible. As you can see from the title, actually, we are currently redesigning the English and Chinese undergraduate writing assessments in particular. So it's a bit weird that we put English and Chinese courses together, but yeah, I mean, this is the main the goal for this project. And to be honest, both Krista and I are the Chinese instructors. So we're more familiar with how the design in our Chinese courses, but we have a few colleagues who are responsible for English communication courses here. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to ask us by the end. All right, so let me first give you a little bit background of this project. As you can see, this project actually started in 2023, so it's actually 2 years ago. So by that time, GenAI first came into the picture, and which made our courses, especially the language courses and communication courses, become very vulnerable in a way, because most of our courses, or all of the courses that are being taught now at our center, will be to train students like writing literacy and speaking literacy, right? And GenAI can do a much better job. Yeah, it's even better than our instructors. So at the time we were thinking what will be the best way for students, and especially how to assess students. We really assess students their generating writing literacy, or we're just assessing, GenAI's outputs than students' real writing skills. So this is what the questions, or the, the reason why we wanted to try on this project. And this project lasted for 1.5 years, and we implemented some of our redesigning strategies in our courses for like 2 semesters. And yeah, with the 2 main goals here. The first one is to address the challenges that GenAI influenced us, especially in our communication courses. And the second one is to explore some new opportunities to kind of boost students' engagement or motivations in taking, and also to train their writing literacy. So the 3 courses involved in this project is mainly the business communication-oriented courses, and in Chinese and also in English. Although the languages being taught in the courses are different, the 3 courses share some commonalities here. So because it's business communication courses, in the courses we mainly teach students like how to, prepare their job applications, how to do the self-branding, how to attend job interviews, and how to, write recommendation reports, how to write business reports, and how to come up with the project proposals, so on and so forth. So most of the courses are related to such workplaces and business oriented. Okay. And by that time, in 2023, not much research can actually inform our study. So the main resources that we refer to by that time, including the Hartman's strategies for teaching GenAI in classroom setting, and also how we can use GenAI to design the assessments. And also we refer to the UNESCO's Quick Start Guide, which is a quite comprehensive guidelines for us to think about how can we integrate GenAI in our tertiary context. And also we've been informed by Chapinchik research on can we actually use reflective writing as one of our assessment types. So these are some of the resources that we refer to. And then we implemented different pedagogical strategies in our courses, including, for example, the reflection assignments. For example, what we request students to submit a reflective essay by the end of the semester. And also, I know that in one of our courses, we ask students to prepare a learning portfolio and the website, because they need to use a website to come up with a learning portfolio. And then in the platform learning portfolio, they have to critically reflect on their experiences when using GenAI in their learning journey. And especially because we also designed some like the chatbots and the feedback bots for students to try on. And then we ask students to reflect on, to compare among the feedbacks from their instructors, from their peer, and also from the GenAI. So we include such reflective process in their assessments. And also we've designed many chatbots to assist students preparing for different business reports and also prepare for the assessments, which I will be showing you in a minute. And also we've modified our writing modules to include more GenAI tools, which means we actively encourage students to use AI tools in their learning and also in their preparation for their assessments. And last but not least, we also taught GenAI like how to write prompts, how to write clear and specific prompts explicitly in our classroom. So this is some of the strategies that we used. And we use different methods, both qualitatively and quantitatively, to evaluate our outputs after 1 and 2 semesters implementation of these strategies, including student surveys, focus groups from students and teachers, and also we've analyzed some of the interactions between the bots and the students, and also we've analyzed some of the reflective essays. All right, so first, the student surveys, we surveyed 40 participants in cycle 1, which is the 4th semester in 2023, and then 70 participants in cycle 2. And then we gathered students' perceptions over several questions, and mainly from these 3 broad categories, including collecting students' perceptions on how they feel like the GenAI integrated writing assessments, and then how they perceive development of their own GenAI literacy, and last but not least, because at our center, we also designed the writing literacy module for students to try on. So we also asked their opinions on that. And then for the first question, I mean, the category of the effectiveness of GenAI integrated writing assessments, actually students rated quite positively, because the score is from 1 to 5, and as you can see, the mean score is around like or above 4. So in cycle 1, like highest scores was seen in career, like the GenAI integrated assessments can actually meet their career relevance, because as I just mentioned, all of our courses are mostly related to prepare their job applications and prepare for their workplace applications. So they feel like these assessments can really be relevant to their future careers. And also they feel like stronger perception of collaborations on the cycle 1. But in cycle 2, because we involved another batch of students or another cohort, so as you can see, the ratings have been actually improved in the communication needs. So for example, how can they really use the correct words, or can they really address the correct audience, so on and so forth. And also they feel like GenAI integrated assessments can help their advanced writing skills. So these are some of the items that received positive ratings, but there are slightly drop in the career relevance and collaboration, which is quite surprising and also interesting to find out the reason. So the second thing is we ask students to evaluate the development of their GenAI literacy. And overall speaking, we also receive positive impacts. They feel like the GenAI literacy has been improved to some extent. For example, across all of these cycles and by comparing the pre and post results, we found that students think that their GenAI literacy in terms of using GenAI for writing suggestions, brainstorming, and expanding the word choice, vocabulary range, and also understand what GenAI can do and cannot do, both being all have been improved to some extent. But students also rated the critical evaluation of GenAI generated outputs probably are still a bit limited. For example, they probably don't really know how they can evaluate the GenAI output, if it's satisfactory or if it's good enough to submit. And last but not least, because we asked students to try on our writing modules, so as you can see, students also found that the GenAI literacy has been improved after using these writing modules. So the summary of the survey findings let us know that all of these redesigning of writing assessments have been enhanced students' perception of meeting their communication needs, and also opening up ways for personalized learning and new feedback routes, because they now know better like how can they use GenAI to provide like feedbacks. And also they feel like their writing literacy has been improved to some extent, but still students, they feel a little bit lower in if the assessments help their career and also collaboration between their peers, and also how they can critically evaluate the outputs. All right, so I want to hand over to my colleague to introduce the findings for the focus groups.
Thank you, Yin. So I want to talk about the student focus groups and also the teacher focus groups. Yes. So except our surveys, so we think like we want to invite our students like 2 or 3 in a group, and then join us with the interview and to find out more details about how they think about our writing modules, and also their attitude about our writing alternative writing assessment. So here actually we list some of the key findings from the interview of our students. So first of all, so our students emphasize the needs for this detailed instruction and guidance. I think that's actually have some, we can link back to also to number 2 is, so their attitudes toward GenAI actually improve when teacher promotes ethical and forward-thinking use of AI tools. Actually, this project we conducted in 2023 to 2024, as you may aware, because now our AI tools evolve a lot. Also, for our students, I think their concept or their ideas about the AI tools actually evolve a lot too. So back at that year, so for students, they think, oh, if the teachers, no matter it's the English teacher or the Chinese teacher, they're trying to encourage the student to think about, oh, how can I use the AI tools more ethically, or how can we be more familiar with the effective prompts, and then the students may more likely to use the AI tools in this whole writing process. So that's the key findings actually from our students focus group. We also invite our teachers actually to join us with the focus group. Like all the teachers who will be teaching our Chinese courses, and some of the teachers who are teaching our English courses, and then we separate them to 2 different groups, and then ask them really to sit down and trying to discuss with them how do you feel about those implementing of GenAI tools when you're trying to teach the course. Also, we conduct like 2 different teachers focus group in each cycle. So there will be 8 teachers and 6 teachers respectively. And also we want to share some of the key findings with you. So actually, for the benefits with perceived by our teachers, like we can separate to the lower level, maybe lower level students, and to the higher level students. Such as, I think those benefits are quite straightforward for those lower level students. They can write more formally and use alternative phrasing. That's what our teachers perceived. And also, those AI tools can help students like to offer multiple feedback pathways, and also their organization's accuracy and critical thinking skills actually kind of improve in some of the extent. And also the AI tools can also support the learning of, such as for our Chinese courses, is mainly very practical. So those practical Chinese writing principles, and students may have more feelings about how to grasp the varieties of writings and general communication skills, they all be supported. But the teachers also mentioned that there are some of the limitations when they're trying to teach those courses, such as for some of the higher level writing skills. So for the teachers, they feel like, maybe it's just a short term, so it's quite difficult actually to observe some noticeable improvement in those higher level writing skills. Okay, and also, we have some of the funding I want to share with you about the students' development of GenAI literacy. Actually, I think it's also our the future trend maybe for us trying to redesign or improve our courses is with how can we help our students to develop those GenAI literacy. So in the process of our project, actually, the teacher mentioned that the students showed some of the growing GenAI literacy and also critical thinking skills, such as they have more awareness of, we need to verify and fact check all the sources because some of the AI tools might offer those the sources may be not that accurate. And also the students agree that, we need to think about and also be more cautious about how to use the AI tools in our writing process, because actually that comes from one teacher talked to their students actually, because in the classroom, they are trying to use AI tools and trying to generate passage, and then to critical analyze how the quality of this passage. And then when they trying to use the AI tools to generate, so there are two groups, actually they generate the same text when they are using the GenAI tools. So the students is more cautious when they use GenAI in their writing process and not just overly general or because the GenAI also show that may have some inaccurate output. And also, we also have observed some of the limitations, such as the stronger students may evaluate AI output effectively, but for those less proficient students who lack out the critical skills, maybe sometimes for them is to judge the AI output reliability is kind of difficult. Okay, so now I'm back to Yin to talk about our bots.
It's time. Right. So also we've designed some chatbots for students to try on when they prepare for their assessments. And I'm going to show you one of the examples here. Actually, we've designed the 6 GPT-4 graded bots. And then because we use this called GPT trainer platform, so we actually can go to the backend to trace the dialogues between the interactions between the students and also the GPT, and to see what is going on there. So we created 6 bots to specifically teach students how to prepare a recommendation report. Because in the recommendation report, we have different sections, including the introduction, recommendations, findings, analysis. So the 3 guide bots will be providing as a line-by-line text development. For example, if students don't know how to structure their recommendation reports, and if there's any content they want to check, so they can go to the guide bot. But we also designed 3 feedback bots for student try on. For example, students can copy and paste what they've prepared to the feedback bots, and feedback bots can provide some feedbacks. So as you can see, the interactions or the conversations between chatbots and the students, mostly students use feedback more, because you can see students use 70 conversations in the introduction section, and 169 conversations will happen in the recommendation section, and more than 100 conversations happening for the findings and analysis sections. So here are some examples showing you how students interacted with the bots. So here is the guide bot. As you can see, we prompt hi, I understand that you have to write the recommendation section. So the gray sections was actually the prompt, the AI. And then the blue block was provided by students. So students saying, it's improving. I think it's just they copied the recommendation report to the bot. So the ChatGPT responded that, that's a great start. Now let's break down and so on and so forth. And then Yeah, and then as you can see, the ChatGPT will like hold hand in hand and to guide students how to further revise their recommendation reports and what other contents can be considered in the following sections. And here is the recommendation feedback bot. So the bot saying, oh, I'm here to give you feedback on your recommendations one at a time if you want me to. So students copy the content to the bot, and the feedback bot continue to provide feedback. So for example, the feedback bot saying, let's break it down into 3 areas: content, organization, and language, because we prompt this, like the feedback bot has to function all of these, the main areas to be covered in the report. So the feedback bot continue to provide more of the responses in terms of these 3 areas. Right, so as you can see, the dialogue continued. And would you like more specific examples of feedback on what else you could improve on? And the students responded yes. And then the ChatGPT continued to provide more examples. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, and interesting cases, like students also like they read what ChatGPT responded, and then they kind of interacted with the GPT saying, oh, but there are 2 with in the sentence. Well, it sounds strange. And the GPT continued with, you're correct, having 2 with in sentence can make a bit confusing. Yeah. So, and also students use GPT to check that, did I mention how this recommendation addressed the issue? Because I think the instructor explicitly told students that the recommendation have to the ultimate goal is to address the issue. So the students ask such questions. Right, the summary of the findings from our chat bot interactions is actually students mostly use bots for the most important sections in the recommendation report, which is the recommendation section, because we have different, like 3 sections. But actually findings, analysis, and also introduction bots are not that quite used compared to the recommendation section. And also the max user messages and the conversations with more than 10 user messages give us such conclusions. Right, and mostly students use guidebots for Q&A. For example, if students want to know how to structure their reports and how to come up with different ideas, and also ask the GPT to provide more ideas or more content examples. And for the feedback bots, it was mostly used to systematically help them to provide, develop their drafts, and also to provide more feedbacks and responses. And also we found that students interacted longer conversation with guide bots, but not with the feedback bots. So most of the case, students only use feedback bots once only, because they just wanted to gather what the bots responded to the particular, the content. One piece of the content, right? So and also we found that guidebot was mostly effective when provided ideas and examples, and for the extended dialogue, for example, asking for examples led to more assistance, but only a few students engaged to that level. So this is some findings here. So last but not least, we use reflective essays to show how students responded to these assessments. So here are some of the general findings here. So for example, students reflected, they found that their GenAI literacy had been, improved or raised to some extent, and also they felt that GenAI could help them with their writings. For example, the vocabulary choice, grammar, and tones. Right. But some of the areas that students found they still need to improve on is on their critical thinking. For example, how can they actually critically evaluate the GenAI outputs? And also they self-evaluated that they feel like they are kind of over-reliant on GenAI, because they just tend to, to take all of the outputs from GenAI into their final submissions. And also they feel like if they want to advance their writing skills, there'll be some areas for improvements as well. Right, so last but not least, we want to share with you some of the takeaway messages for our project, because although we already finished this project last year. We are still in actually it's another round of revision our courses, especially during the summer, because we feel that because we cannot get rid of GenAI, and we must think about how we can actually use our writing assessment to accurately capture students' improvements in their learning process. So some of the adjustments that we're currently considering, including, for example, we want to focus on students' more higher order thinking, for example, critical thinking. If we can ask students to provide critical analysis of comparison between the GenAI outputs, and also to provide justification of why they want to take the GenAI outputs and what kind of revisions they've done on the output. So this is something that we want to include. And also want to focus more on the problem solving oriented assessments as well. And some other strategies that we are actively considering in our assessments, including we want students to submit a process-oriented assessment, which means we don't want to see a final output. We want to them to submit in process. So for example, if it's a project proposal, then we want them to submit at the brainstorming stage, and also want them to submit in the middle, like add in some of the checking points to see how the ideas develop and evolve. And also we want them to include much of the contextual or more localized tasks or reflections in their assessments. For example, we want them to use more reference from the class discussions or the teacher's feedback, and also their personal reflections. And we also, actually, we already tried this, is that we wanted them to include more first-hand research. For example, in one of our courses, we asked students to actually interview the professors or interview the industry practitioners, and then we want them to include their first-hand findings in their final assessments. But to be honest, even the interviews and surveys and everything can be faked and can be generated by AI with one click, right? But in the meantime, we ask students to provide like the so-called evidence. For example, if it's an interview, we ask students to submit the interview clips with as well. Yeah, and last but not least, we also still need to keep teaching our students AI literacy, and also we want to develop our own AI literacy as well, because we need to guide students how to prompt accurately, right, as shared from the previous presentations. Okay, this is the website page, because this is one of the deliverables in our project. If you are interested in seeing like all of these chatbots designs, and also how the GenAI related the assessments being implemented in our courses, feel free to take a look by scanning this QR code. Right, so this is the end of our presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think we have some time for one question. Any of you would like to share your feedback or ask any question? There's no question, then you're more than welcome to move forward to the coffee break. And after the coffee break, we'll have 3 more presentations. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this talk. As you see, the title of our talk is Using AI in Research Writing, What Teachers and Researchers Need to Know. We'll start with Ben. I'll continue, and then Mary will finish the talk.
Thank you, Hassan. He's also chairing the session as well, so he'll make sure we're on time. As you'll see from the introduction slide here, this is a talk, is a modification of a manuscript currently under consideration in academic journal. It's been reviewed, got major revisions, and it's under review again. So if you have any comments or suggestions that you think would help us to improve our arguments or points, they're more than welcome, and we encourage them at the end for you to share those. So like Hassan said, I'm going to start off. As you all know, and as you can tell from this conference or the summit, we're now living in a very different world. AI is now everywhere. I was just thinking of all the different kind of tools that we might experience in our daily lives that influence how we engage with different kinds of tasks. So for example, POE, this is very popular in Hong Kong, but we also have tools like MaxQDA that we use in qualitative research that now has an AI assistive feature that helps with our coding. We have things like Scopus AI that instead of doing a keyword search, we can do a natural language search. Type in a query like, what are the top topics in academic integrity, and it will give us an AI overview and give us links to the articles that it has cited to support that overview. We've got things like Google that has an AI overview now. So instead of looking at the search top rankings, it gives us a summary or an overview of the kind of information that is gathered from those sources and presents that information. We have things like Canva, so we might be looking at multimodal text, but now those are automating parts of those processes as well. So we're seeing AI embedded in many, many different things. And this is influencing how we engage in academic writing as well, and also writing for publication. And we've got interested in the concept of writing for publication, partly because it's very high stakes, but also because it has vulnerabilities because there are anonymous aspects to it and transparency issues to it. And we're also seeing that influence in a number of different ways. So for example, we're seeing a huge increase in self-publishing. So in sites like Amazon, they're getting overwhelmed with self-published books that are generally written by AI. So people are generating content, presenting that as a text, and then submitting that to Amazon for people to buy, to the point where they've had to restrict the number of books that people can self-publish every day. We have new publishers coming out arguing that they want to disrupt publishing by publishing 8,000 books a year, which we can see having influence on how we understand publishing and how we get knowledge and how we sift through that information to help us learn new things and understand how things are changing. We have AI tools promoting themselves as sources of essays, create essays and things like this within the way that they promote themselves and present themselves to users and to consumers. And then we have evidence of the change in the writing that we see, where there's increase in certain kinds of words that are more typical from large language models, feeding themselves into academic articles and things like this. So as we know, generative AI tools are incredibly powerful. This is just a quick example of ChatGPT 4.0 writing. So I write in a prompt here, this is in real time when I was doing it. Not a very good prompt, but a prompt nonetheless. So write an article about writing for research in the age generative AI age, cite appropriate sources, okay? And then of course it just quickly generates a essay on that topic. So it looks incredibly powerful, and it has this incredibly powerful way of creating text. So this is just an example here that is created, and here's the references. But it's also highly problematic. So I took out those 4 references that it did that from that point, and then I tried to find them and see if they existed. And what we see is only one of them actually existed when I did that study. But interestingly, when we look at the other ones, they do look very much like legitimate sources, and there are similar sources to these that exist, but they're different. And this shows us how these tools work. They're using statistical probability. They're picking out authors that are likely to have written on this topic, and then information from those authors that create a title that looks like one that's been written by that author. When we see correct ones, this might be that those are in the database as a chunk of text itself that it was drawing from. So that's why we see them differently here, but that would be down to human labeling of those chunks of text. But we see similar ones that are here. So it's not here, not here, not here. This is the closest match, but it's not exactly the same. So we can see this happening. So we can see they're incredibly powerful, but they create lots of challenges as well. So when we're thinking about how we use them in our research writing, or how we use them in our research processes, we have to be conscious of these things, right? So a few things we can think about. Generative AI tools do not understand the data they are accessing, nor the human-like text they create. They cannot judge the quality or accuracy of the data. So they are accessing it, but they're not understanding it. They're making statistical probability outcomes based on what they're getting. Okay, so when we're using them in our research writing, we've got to be conscious of that. So as a humans, we have developed the ability to make judgment. We can understand that a paper published in this journal is likely to be better than a paper published in this journal to a certain degree. We're able to look at the methodology and make conclusions based on that, the kind of rigor and validity of that study, okay? But they're not doing those kind of things. They're using statistical probability to make those judgments at this point. AI training data and algorithms are black boxes. We don't know what they are drawing on, nor how they formulate their responses. This can create issues of bias. So when a particular piece of information is more common in that database, they're more likely to draw on that, even though it's maybe not the most accurate response to provide. So this kind of issue comes up. And then particular contexts or particular places have more data than others, okay? So we'll see more of that data coming into these kinds of tools. So for example, open access data there's more of that than there is data behind paywalls and subscription data. They rely on statistical probabilities. It means the output is not fully predictable or replicable. So that means that each time you prompt them, even if you developed a very effective prompt, they may come up with something different each time. So they may find different bits of information each time. And we've also started to see things like generalization bias now coming in, where even if you ask it to summarize a specific text that you've inputted, it will still draw on its original training data in its responses to you when giving those responses. Even if you ask it not to, it will still draw on that kind of information. And not all generative AIs are equal. So when we're using them in these high-stakes environments like writing for publication or in our research, we have to be very conscious of the tools we are using and the affordances of those tools and the limitations of those tools for those particular tasks, okay? So these are things that we need to be conscious of. So should we use AI in our research writing? It's a good question. And one of the reviewers said that in our original article, we were too positive about use of AI in our writing. And that we should be stating that, this should be a choice, that if we don't feel we should be using it, we shouldn't be using it. And I somewhat agree with this. Yes, but we need to avoid seeing generative AI solely tools of efficiency. And instead, we should consider how AI improves the quality of our research writing. So this is something we have to be conscious of. If using it doesn't do that, we probably shouldn't use it, right? So if we can't think of a way that this tool is helping us to do our research better, improving the quality of our research study, then perhaps we shouldn't be thinking about using it. It shouldn't just be about getting the paper written quicker and getting it out faster, but about how we improve the quality of the study through the integration of AI into our processes. So we propose a framework that can help us decide if we should use AI or not. And if we do, how we should use AI. So this is my last slide, and then I'm going to pass it over to Hassan. We took a framework developed by Luke Plonsky, who has developed a study quality framework for applied linguistics research. And he has 4 different areas that he considers to be important to a quality study, which is transparency, methodological rigor, ethics, social value. His framework came out or was written in the wonderful world before AI. So he didn't consider AI in his framework. So we've added human accountability to this framework. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go through each aspect of the framework in relation to AI. And I'll pass the time to Hassan to continue this.
Thank you very much, Ben. So we saw the use of GenAI in research, and we're thinking that we don't see a framework in TESOL research and guiding researchers how to use AI if they plan to do so. I'm going to go over the first three components of the framework, and Mary will introduce the other components. Let's start with transparency. What does transparency mean in general, and why do we need transparency? We need transparency because transparency enables us to assess a study's contribution to practice, theory, and methodology. If we want to be transparent in our research, we need to clearly detail the methodological choices we made and the data collection procedures we went through, and also the analysis we did, so that if it's a quantitative research, it can increase replicability. And if it's a qualitative research, it can ensure trustworthiness in research. But how does it work for GenAI when we want to use GenAI and be transparent? Well, like any other methodological choice, we need to be transparent in our use of GenAI in our research. We need to be transparent in our substantial, deliberate, and methodological uses of GenAI in our research. Here you can see part of our framework. On the left side, you can see some methodological decisions or actions that we are encouraging researchers to consider. And also we have some can-do questions that can actually work as a checklist for researchers if they plan to use AI, and also reflect on how they use AI in their research. For the sake of time, I cannot go through all the details, but I'll try to just explain some of them. For example, with regard to decisions and actions that we encourage them to consider, they could consider keeping detailed records of the tools, prompts, output, data, methodological use of GenAI tools in their research and write-up. And they can consider these can-do questions. For example, can we provide adequate information about the GenAI tools used, like their model, version, prompts, settings used, data retrieval? So we are encouraging them to consider these can-do questions and also keep a record of whatever they did in case they want to share it with the journal for the sake of transparency. What about methodological rigor? Well, methodological rigor is essential to ensure the validity and credibility of a study's finding. Poor methodological choices, like cherry-picking the data, or use of low-quality tools, or errors in analysis, can seriously threaten the study findings and the methodological rigor of our studies. But how does methodological rigor translate for GenAI use in research? Well, GenAI tools can increase or decrease the methodological rigor of our studies. They can increase the methodological rigor if researchers appropriately, reflectively use them to get feedback on tool design. They could be used for coding large data sets, secondary coding, and translation. Human oversight and human expertise is a must here. And they could decrease methodological rigor by increasing bias or leading to inaccuracies. What about our framework? So here we can see the decisions or actions that we encourage researchers to consider. Let's look at the third one, for example, on the left. Engage GenAI in providing critical feedback on research designs and methodologies in TESOL research. For example, if I have an instrument, can I get some feedback on the instrument design, data analysis, methods, and theoretical frameworks? I'm sure some of you have already seen some papers that are reporting on how they use GenAI tools to do secondary data analysis to get some reliability of their data analysis. We're already seeing this coming up. And some can do questions like, can we justify the selection and use of particular tools in terms of enhancing aspects of academic rigor and some other can-do questions. And here comes ethics, the third component of our framework. Ethics is concerned with ensuring consent, data protection, honesty, and compliance with ethical issues. Generally, it could be argued that GenAI tools can facilitate unethical behaviors like data fabrication or plagiarism. Some would argue that for some uses, it's okay, like if you use AI to improve your writing, but for some other uses, it's debatable. For example, can I ask AI to summarize? As Ben said, there's the risk of generalization if you use AI to do summarizing for you. But some more issues are more serious and should be considered, like generalization bias, cultural nudging, and data leakage. I think we don't have time to go through them, but in the question and answer, if you have questions, we're happy to respond. And what about our framework with regard to ethical issues? Some decisions and actions that we encourage researchers to ponder over. Soliciting consent from participants to use GenAI with their data. If I'm collecting data in my consent form, am I telling my participants that I'll probably use GenAI tools to do data analysis? Do they consent to this or not? And am I soliciting consent or not? And some can-do questions. For example, can we declare that all stakeholders were made aware of the use of GenAI in the research? Or can we state our study is in compliance with ethical guidelines and institutional and national policies? And here I hand it over to Mary to continue with the other components.
Thanks, Hassan. So I'd just like to say I'm probably talking from the standpoint of a journal editor. So we've shared with you that more and more people are using GenAI in research and publication, and we've introduced our framework. So I'd like to talk about two more elements of our framework. It really concerns me that with GenAI, it's very easy for authors to churn out more and more research. And I think authors might even look at algorithms and think, oh, you know, which kind of topics, which keywords should I put in? And they'll just churn out lots of research. But two elements we'd like to consider are, the next one being societal value. So if we keep churning out research, actually, does the research impact us? How does it impact society for the good? And society means us, academics, as well as the wider society. Think about all the research you've read. Is it very easy for us to use the implications in our classroom? Maybe for medical research, but really in our field, to translate research into practice takes a lot of time. So I think that one quality aspect of research in the age of AI is whether the research influences our practices, maybe our curriculum, assessment, or instructional policies. This is really concerning because we are all going through publish or perish, and we're just desperate to publish. And maybe if you're very desperate, if you're a young researcher, you are absolutely desperate to publish, and you rely on AI too much. You know, is it really going to impact the quality of research in our field? Another aspect of using AI is sometimes the output is not really accessible to people to read. There's so much output, and it's written in such a sterile way that when you read it, it really doesn't mean very much to you. So can we use GenAI so that our research output can be accessible, so that people can read it, they can understand it? GenAI has the potential to do that. We can have multimodal expression. Some journals now allow authors to have a 1-minute video of their article. Isn't that fantastic? And there are more and more tools like Google Notebook LM. You can put your article in. It will create a podcast talking about your article. And I recently discovered Steve AI. You can actually put your article in it and makes little videos summarizing. So if we can use AI for these purposes, I think that that's part of the quality of research during the age of AI. Now, in the interest of time, I will just get you to look at the questions. These are the key things. How can we explain how the use of AI has enabled the study to make a positive impact on our practice, policy, or curriculum? Can we utilize the tools to make findings more accessible to diverse readers? Now, the last quality is human accountability. Do you think there will come a day when the whole process from coming up with the idea to publication can be done without humans? Is it possible? Is it possible? I really wonder. I think that GenAI developments are really challenging us to think about human intelligence. This morning in the panel, they kept talking about human intelligence. So we need to think about how human intelligence must always continue to be a part of research and publication. We have autonomous AI agents. I asked ChatGPT whether it's possible for the whole process from beginning to end to be done in an automated way. And apparently if you use Zapier, I don't know what it is, but apparently if you use Zapier, you can actually instruct it so that if you submit and it comes back as a rejection, it will submit it to another journal for you. Can you imagine? We just keep doing that. And then when you get requests for revisions, you know what? It can also revise for you and then submit somewhere else. Perish the thought that we will come to that day. So I think human accountability, it really emphasizes our responsibility, everyone here, to make sure that we are accountable for accuracies, inaccuracies, and for the dissemination of our research. And to do that, all of us really need to have this AI competence. Maybe we need to call it a research and publication competence. I don't know what it is, but I don't have those skills yet. And finally, we really need to know how AI works. I think Ben's already mentioned it. What's happening at the back end when we use AI? The research that's being published with the help of AI, we really need to know how the knowledge is being created. So to summarize, these are some questions we can ask about human accountability. When we do research, we need to state that we are accountable for the study, including the errors, and we really need to have knowledge and skills needed to use GenAI in our research. So I'd like to conclude by really just asking all of us to play an important part in ensuring that the future of research and publication does not degenerate or get derailed. We really need to have all of these aspects so that as a community, we can continue to be very proud of the research we do, and so that young academics don't think of publication just as something to be done efficiently, but that they do publication with some joy and with some authenticity and creativity. So we'd like to thank you very much, and please give us any comments to help us to improve our framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. So we have 5 minutes for questions and answers. Do we have any questions?
Thank you for sharing. That's very interesting. And I really want to know, any one of you, do you have any practical, your personal experience of using AI in your writing of research articles and how you use them? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can give you a couple. So I've used it for cross-checking of qualitative analysis. So doing the manual coding of qualitative data, interview data first, and then I developed a prompt and then used a large language model to also code the same data, primarily to see if there's any codes that I missed or it saw things in a different way that I could then look at the data again. So in one emphasis, the data was very consistent. In another study, there was actually a theme that I didn't pick up on, or my research team didn't pick up on in the first manual coding, and we're able to look at the data again and find that theme and add that theme to our findings. So that's one example within the process. So that's using it as kind of a cross-checking, because I think when we code as humans, sometimes we will come in with preconceptions about what we're looking for, and we may miss things in our data, or we might interpret things differently from others. So if we don't have a big team, if it's one of us doing it ourselves, or doing it with a team with very like-minded people, we may miss something. But if we have another eye on it, then we can do that. But I would always say that do the human, at the moment anyway, do the manual coding first, and then use a machine, because then you can compare, rather than use the machine first and think, oh, that's pretty good, and kind of stop there. The other is, of course, just in the writing process itself. Like I've long used Grammarly as a writing assistant. I like those kinds of assistants more than large language models, because you are in the driving seat still, in the sense that you can select, reject, or accept the suggestions they make, and that keeps that agency of the author. And sometimes they don't interpret the things the way that you intend to say them, but you know that. Whereas if you use these large language models to say rewrite this or rewrite this in a more academic style, it may misinterpret more. So I think those are the two uses that I've used. Yeah. I explicitly stated them in the methods sections of the articles that I wrote, and showed the process I went through in doing that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Emma.
Thank you for sharing your experience of using large language models to help you organize qualitative data. I actually tried the same thing. Yeah. And I think it depends on the size of your data. When I tried it with a small set, is okay. But when the size grow larger, the language model began to generate data that wasn't there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a risk. And that's why we've got to keep that human oversight over everything. Yeah, if you want to use it that way, and abandon it if it's not working, right? Yeah.
Is there any way that you can prompt the language model to prevent it from hallucinating?
No, as far as I know, there isn't. Hallucination is baked into the models. That's why these generalization biases are also an issue too. I mean, I had extensive experience using the like MaxQDA or NVivo's AI features. They do suggest that they could prevent those things, but I can't guarantee it because I haven't had enough experience working with those tools. But I did try another one. They approached me to try it. It's called Alicia, and that was supposed to be able to manage large amounts of qualitative data. And I tried it, and I didn't find that it did what it says it did. And it skipped the step. It didn't provide me with the themes. It went straight to presenting the findings as an amalgamated group of almost like a finding section. But it has a lot of the issues that I've experienced with other models, which is I'll say like overselling. So lots of like incredibly important findings, like significant impact, things like that, which the data didn't support. That kind of. So yeah. I think more work needs to be done in understanding these other kind of tools that are coming out. But my understanding is they will still have some of the same issues that other large language models have, because like the speaker said this morning, a lot of these tools are built on the top of large language models. So they're kind of borrowing the architecture, but then narrowing the functionalities to a specific task. So the issues that the large language models have, those models will likely have as well.
Thank you. So just one quick follow-up. So if you did use AI to help you sort the data, in terms of the transparency principle, do you like declare it? And are the publishers willing to publish something?
So far, I've had one paper accepted for publication where I explicitly stated how I used AI as part of my research process. It's in system. So you can check that one. But I did have to put a lot of effort into describing that process, which I think is justifiable because it's one of the first papers to explain the process. So it sets the expectation when you do that. So I do think that we need more studies that are transparent about this, because our concern, and one of the concerns we had for writing this paper in the first place, is that scholars are using these tools for qualitative coding. They are using them to support their writing processes, but then the current culture is promoting deception. Don't be transparent, because if I'm transparent, I'm going to get judged harder. Don't be transparent because I might get a retraction. One of the colleagues writes here is about retractions.
Yeah.
So my best thing to do is to use it, but not say I'm using it. And then we have that issue where we start to lose trust, or it's already happening, but the trust, more and more of the trust goes from what we read and what we engage in. So the more transparent we can be about how we're using these tools, the better. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Continue the same talk. I just want to know that we also use LLM for qualitative analysis or quantitative analysis in applied linguistics. My concern is that now every journal provide one clause to acknowledge that you have used, either you have used AI in analysis. Did you use AI for interpretation of results?
What
Interpretation of quantitative results?
Interpretation. So what do you mean by
means we can ask AI
quantitative?
to quantitative data. We can ask AI to interpret the results, and we can use the same results in the paper.
No, I'm a qualitative researcher, so I don't have a lot of quantitative data in my research. I do some mixed method studies, but I haven't used it for that. But the same things applies, and we're slightly arguing against the kind of like the blank statement that the journals argue for. We're arguing for writing specifically in the methods section a detailed description of what you did, because I think these kind of like statements, they don't mean much. If you say I used AI as part of my process, it doesn't say much. Describing the process.
I wonder whether it's going to be like the panelists said this morning. It's just going to be normalized that we just use AI.
Yeah.
So that's why we are arguing that we should just put it in the methodology section, because a lot of these journals, they just say, how have you used it? Yeah. And there are two problems with that. Some people are just not going to declare. But honestly, my greatest fear is that actually, it's okay for you to use AI, but some people are so scared to get caught that they won't even use it, even in ways that might be positive and might actually enhance the research. So we really have this need for this discussion about what is reasonable use, what is acceptable use, and we hope that you can help us to really come up with something that we can agree on.
Yeah, this is the same thing that in institution, they do not accept AI percentage more than 20% in any assignment or any theses, or even if you are talking about research articles when you submit that. So if we do use AI, then the journals turn it back that you used more than 20%. So what shall we do? Whether we use AI or we don't use AI. So that's why, students.
I could give you a whole other talk on AI detection and how the issues of these kinds of tools as part of our kind of like academic integrity processes, right? Because they're also highly problematic in how we're using them or what kinds of AI they are picking up. They're not picking up your using of AI in your research methods, are they?
Yeah.
They're picking up AI in the writing, and they're picking up certain kinds of AI in writing. So it's not. So you could just use AI in the whole process of doing your study, but it won't pick it up in a AI detection tool, right? It only picks up AI writing. There's a copy and pasted from an AI tool of some kind. So and this is our challenge, is that we're kind of working in this strange thing. I mean, when Turnitin, was it 2022, ChatGPT came out, and then Turnitin in March 2023 came out, and I was like, oh God, we're using technology to try and solve a technology problem when actually it's a human psychology problem. It's how our mindsets are, right?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so that's my thinking. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's interesting. I wanted to go to the sort of journal editor's perspective, and I was wondering whether given the pressure on young academics to publish or perish, and given the amount of what I could say maybe dubious quality articles, is it going to come a point where the journal editors are actually asking for much higher quality, or putting in place many more barriers to publication? And do you think that that will feed down to the institutions, as in they'll start saying, you know, you will only be credited for a publication in journal A, B, or C, and not anything else? Is there that sort of a backlash happening in your experience, or do you anticipate that happening?
I think what's happening is that we're all being spammed with lots and lots of submissions because it is easier for people to churn out publications. Yeah, it's quite a desperate situation, I have to say, because we are also trying to be a bit more cautious. So, for example, with our journal, we actually now click on some of the DOIs to make sure they exist. Of course, we can't click on 100 DOIs, but we actually instruct our admin staff to do random checks until the publishers can find a solution for us. So I really can't say for other journals, but I think all of us are also grappling with this. We don't really have clear policies. What I'm thinking is for the young academics, yeah, it's a very difficult situation, because also you're only trying to publish in certain journals. So I guess, you know, my advice would be really to err on the side of caution, I would say. If you use AI, disclose it. You're never going to be done for this over disclosure, but you may be done for under disclosure. I'm sure I haven't answered your question properly, because we really don't have the answer.
We don't have an answer. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I also think it's kind of impacting on students in the way that there's a mistrust, as in we all think our students are using AI, and they all think, well, if I get a good grade, it doesn't matter because the teacher thinks I used AI, so it doesn't matter. So there's a sort of general devaluation, it seems.
Trust that's happening across. Yeah. I think that's a challenge for all of us in this period. Like this kind of trust that we need in order to survive in the kind of environment where there is so much that, you know, we rely on the author to have collected the data. We rely on all those things that we rely on to be true. It's part of a process. We don't trust, and when we don't trust, that breaks down all the kind of systems. So everything you read, you're like, is this really? Did this really happen? Is this really true? It creates this kind of much more critical way that we engage with everything, which can be problematic, right? Yeah. So I do agree. I do agree with you. Yeah.
One last question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because we just talked about using GenAI in data analysis. So do you think we can view GenAI as an intercoder to evidence our data analysis validity? Because sometimes the journal or supervisors ask students to have another coder, or we just view GenAI as a helper to improve our working efficiency.
That's a great question. So based on our understanding is that we should always have the human in the loop and in the position of making the decisions. So if you're using AI as for interrelated reliability, then I would argue that you would probably want to say that you prioritize the human coding, but then you found reliability between your coding and that coding. That's what I would probably suggest. Or if you saw a big gap, then you would recode using a human to recode, if that makes sense. So then you would create that process of human AI, human coding, or something like this to kind of protect your process. Or what could be good is that we need more methodological literature on this. So if some people can do some kind of experimental studies looking at how large language models can take up that role, and if we can find consistency, then we can start to argue that that's okay. But at this point, we don't have enough methodological literature to support that. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think we're done. Thank you, everyone, for attending this talk. If you have any questions or concerns or suggestions for improving the framework, you could get in touch with us via email. Thank you very much.